San Diego Regionals is in a day or two, depending on when you're watching this, and it will be the last Silver Tempest format in tournament in the United States. And if you're going to Europe, well, you still have Liverpool, so it'll be nice to watch the tournament, kind of get a better idea of what's going on. In this video, we're going to break down the results from Arlington a little bit and what the metagame preview and what I expect to happen will be this weekend in San Diego. So hey guys, what's up? My name is Rahul. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we're going to look at some top tournament results. So Arlington, Texas had the biggest Pokemon regionals just a few weeks ago at 1,224 Masters, which is pretty record-breaking, pretty crazy. It's like almost 100 and some, bigger than the next biggest regionals. And the story has been the same in the Silver Tempest format. In LAIC, we saw Lugia dominate. The weekend after in Toronto, Lugia didn't. Lugia got countered in every region. All three regions, Lugia got absolutely dunked on. And then we came back 1 week or 2 weeks later, and Lugia once again dominated. You can look at the statistics here. 49 decks, which means 37.98% of the day 2 decks were Lugia. That is an absurdly high meta share. Followed by 16% Lost Zone Box, 14% Regis, and 4% Mew Genesect. Or not 4, sorry, 9.3%. But what we're going to look at is a couple of the decks and lists and why some of these variants, there are variants within each of these subcategories. So you guys can be better prepared. If you're playing into Lugia, Connor Fenton's winning list might be the most copied one because it's got the Raikou. It did win the regionals at an undefeated record, which has also not happened very often. It does have a copy of Birdkeeper, no copies of Eldegoss. Sports the collapsed stadiums, plays 1 heat energies, no speed. And, you know, this is a list you should familiarize yourself with. There's no Dunsparce or Manaphy, which is concerning, but Raikou is something you guys should definitely keep an eye out for. Understand that Raikou and Birdkeeper might be played in some of these lists. Moving forward, you have the top 4 list from John Eng, which was geared to beat RCS Drawled with heavy choice belts, Path to the Peak, and Regigigas to deal with that. And the Mew VMAX matchup. Also important to note that this list has a Dunsparce and a Manaphy, but no cards like Raikou in here. For those additional like shenanigans, effectively. So when you're moving forward, you should think about lists like this: a 3-2 Lugia V-Star line. So it looks like a lot of these lists are going down from 3 to 2 Lugia V-Stars. So you should keep that in mind as you're preparing. No more Crobats are really making their way into decks. It's a lot of just Luminions across the board, Luminions and Orangaroos. Yeah. And the final list I wanted to look at and talk about is Liam Halliburton's in the top 8. And Liam played a little bit of an unorthodox build, playing pretty much every tech card he wanted, with Luminion, with Eldegoss, with a Raikou, with the Snorlax. But the interesting cards to be of note here are the Canceling Colognes, the Capturing Aroma, and the Echoing Horn. Now, Echoing Horn is a card that you might not expect very often, so please play around it, I guess. It's like, it's hard to play around, but like, Lugia can be playing this card now. Echoing Horn might be the card that puts it over the top by just getting that additional push towards the end of the end or middle of the game. Capturing Aroma is flip a coin if heads, search after an evolution Pokemon, if tails, you get a basic, and it's just another consistency card on the top of Ultra, Evo, and Quick Ball. I think some lists are now playing up to 4 Capturing Aroma in addition to these, so that's 16 consistency cards that Lugia is now adding to their, or having total, not including Pokemon, which is crazy. And the Canceling Cologne is for both Duraludon and for Weezing decks. So against Weezing decks, they can go ahead and Canceling Clone the Weezing for 1 turn while they set up their board. And that's pretty much all you need to beat Weezing. You just need 1 turn of Acceleration of Energy, because then you can kind of just dictate the pace of the game from there. So interesting tech cards are these 3. I think you'll see the Capturing Aroma more frequently than others in the lists. So that's what you should expect from Lugia decks coming up this weekend. Every single Lugia deck in this top 8 had a different thing they wanted to answer and respect. So that's kind of the thing to think about moving forward. We have this Vikavolt Aerodactyl deck that did well out of nowhere, piloted by Alex Kreckler, getting 2nd place. I don't think this deck will be emulated too much, because I think the allure of this deck was the surprise factor, the crazy counts in the deck, the 2 VIP pass, the 1/1 Aerodactyl, the Raikou, the Drapion, like the Goon, the Dit, like all these cards are like super unexpected. So when you sit across the table from it, I think Alex won a lot of game 1s because his opponents had no idea what the hell was going on, myself included when I played against him. So I think that surprise factor is out of the bag a little bit, and this deck gets a little bit worse moving forward. I don't think it fully beats Lugia either. I'm not convinced. So yeah, but if you see a vehicle deck, familiarize yourself with a list like this so you can move forward and just be like, hey, I've seen Alex Kreckler's Vikavolt list. I should know what to play around a little bit. I should know that there's only 2 Vikavolts. I should know there's an Aerodactyl. There's goons in there for sure. That kind of stuff, just simple stuff. Then we have Regis. Regis had a very good showing in Arlington, but that's also a byproduct of a lot of these Lugia decks cutting Dunsparce and Manaphy, which I think will not happen this weekend. I think Dunsparce and Manaphy will both make their way back into a lot of lists, one or both. So Regis might not have the best of times, but Regis is still a very good deck. Christian Fontenot piloted this to a top 8 finish. Very simple list across the board. Like Regis usually plays consistent counts of everything. Yellhorn, Battle-Lecky is the only thing you should keep in mind. And then stadiums, I guess, can be different from just straight paths. But the energies are usually the same. The Regis are usually the same. Nothing really crazy to write home about with Regis, but just understand that this deck plays this way and know which, to target around gift, count which Regis are already in the discard, force your opponent to find those ordinary routes, etc., etc. We have 2 versions of Lost Box that have become very popular, and I think the version that is going to be more successful because of its power level is the Amazing Rayquaza version. Now, the Amazing Rayquaza version has Amazing Burst, which does a ton of damage, and can basically one-shot Lugia, or other decks, just one-shot stuff in general, which the other Lost Box variant doesn't really do until you get to the Kyogre stage, and the Kyogre stage feels a little bit obvious. So this version kind of just preys on the fact that you can go cram into Rayquaza, into one-shot again with Rayquaza if you have the hand for it, and then chain Sableye. And if you're under a lot of pressure, you can go into an early Raikou to just trade the 2 for 2 and accelerate the pace of the game, which is something that this deck likes to do. And you have Snorlax as well to put a lot of pressure on. Obviously, there's no choice belts or anything, but the Snorlax does put a lot of work in here. Some of the builds also play the Amazing Rare Raikou in there and play metals instead of water, so they can accelerate to that. But this one's more linear, it looks like, and just better across the board with a heavy group of Raihans to get the attachment on Rayquaza, plus the Mirage Gate, plus another attachment. 4 energies can one-shot anything in the format, besides a Mew VMAX with an Oricorio on the bench, but you can just deal with the Oricorio at some point. So you should familiarize yourself with how this list kind of pilots, functions, works, and go from there, because this might be the more popular one. Then there's the Azul Garcia Griego groups build of Kyogre Lost Box, where they just kind of alternate the lightning attacker every week, playing Bird Keeper, Boss, a Kyogre, Aqua Storm. Just knows if you're playing against this deck, hold your Manaphy till the very end is kind of the biggest thing if you can, because then it wastes a turn on them to Sableye and it buys you a ton of time. The deck doesn't have a ton of one-shot potential besides the Snorlax. But yeah, nothing crazy in this list to even write home about either. Just the Drapion to ensure that they have a Mew matchup that's decent, and everything else is pretty stock standard and good. This is all just it makes sense, and this is a list you should know by now, I think, in my opinion. If you see Lost Box, the old version of Lost Box with the fires and the paths, I think is a little bit obsolete. So this is what you should expect. And then we have Mew VMAX, which is going to be good no matter what until its rotation. This is Judge Mew. Judge Mew has become very popular, earning a top 32 spot in the regionals. Judge is just better than Marnie because you can play around Rangaroo with Path to the Peak. Big Parasols are making their way into lists to deal with Yveltal, or forcing your opponent to have the first knockout with a Lugia as opposed to a Yveltal. Yeah, and then Lost Vacuums. I mean, these lists usually have a couple of tech cards that are alternating. Maybe less vacuums sometimes, maybe more. This one doesn't have a Silene, but I feel like a Silene would be really good in a deck like this, obviously. But just small stuff like that. Small techs can be alternated in Mew VMAX. And then finally, RCS Drawled, which has become the flavor of this format. Doing well at the very first regionals, coming back and kind of riding that success. Arc Drawled has become kind of the dark horse of the tournaments. 1 or 2 usually do well, no matter how many are played. The deck is just very simple, straightforward. It's probably the most linear deck in this format, so it's nice to familiarize yourself with what kind of happens in this deck, which is just Trinity Nova into 2 Gmax pulverization, or 2 Skyscrapers get set up, and you're like, okay, how do I deal with this? And so every deck should have a game plan on how to deal with 2 Dryodons potentially, more than anything. And they play a heavy group of boss, so they can have it whenever they need it to just deal with your threats if that's the problem, and Parasols as well. So an interesting deck, and I think this is the big like decks you should keep an eye out for moving forward and understand how they work. So good luck in San Diego to everyone going. I'll be there as well. Keep in mind, if you are attending San Diego Regionals, deck lists are due at 8 p.m. Friday night, and there are no vendors available on Friday. So if you have any last minute cards you need, that's going to suck. I think somebody posted on Twitter, there's some stories nearby. But all that being said, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. It helps the channel a ton. That's all I really ask of you guys. Good luck to everyone going this weekend. See ya.